what I wanted to do was have a little conversation with both yourselves around what's happening in Datalex right now, because it is an exciting time for us, and there have been some very interesting sort of developments. But before we get into that, just to introduce everybody around the table, if you wouldn't mind first, Bert, to introduce
Not at all. Bert Craven from T2RL. I'm Deputy CEO and I run the technology practice there. We've been working with Datalex for probably 20 years, certainly before my time, but I know our relationship goes back a long, long way. And it's great to be here with you guys today and to hear about your exciting news.
And I'm Adam Dunn, Chief Product Officer at Datalex. So I've recently rejoined Datalex after 6 years away at AWS. So I'm rejoining at an interesting time for Datalex and the industry.
So what I wanted to talk about really was where Datalex is going, both with Stellex and its adjacent platform called Stellex Plus. We have some interesting stuff as far as what we're doing with our current customers like EasyJet, which we just recently released dynamic bundling with them, and also with Air Transat, where we've done Datalex Pay, which is a payment orchestration platform, which I think you're going to talk about a little bit. I'm going to say it at length, just because.
So Datalex Pay is one of the pluses. It's one of the
add-on
modules.
Datalex Pay is one. Right. Yes, sorry. So I should really say that. So literally, Stellex, it refers to the main core platform, which Datalex has been known for a very, very long time. But Stellex Plus is adjacent, things which are fully modular, things which can be built on the side. You don't have to take the whole platform to take some of the benefits from it. But some of that is also foundational for some things I want to talk about amongst us now around offers and orders. And I know you have a very, very distinct stand on that. So, Bert, it is fantastic that you're here because I don't think you're very frequently outside of an airport, so that's quite nice.
No, it's nice to be on the ground, and particularly nice to be on Dublin on one of its fantastic sunny days.
So I don't know if you wouldn't mind sharing with us some of the things that you've seen within the industry, what's happening with offers and orders. You talk to airlines constantly, just give us some idea of the sort of things that are happening out there.
Yeah, so I think we run an annual conference where and for the last 3 or 4 years we've been talking about offer, order, settle, deliver. And we were making the point at the end of last year's conference that we'd kind of had a year of learning and then another year of planning, and that this year felt like the year of execution. When the rubber's really starting to hit the road, we've seen some very big contracts signed, and we've seen the start of the delivery, the start of the transition programs, some large, some kind of the low-hanging fruit, as you were talking about, things like dynamic offer and so on, very, very popular and hot topics at the moment. And so really we're seeing a couple of trends within the industry. You've got the traditional demand trends, which is driven by the airline's existing contract. So the airline may have had a 10-year contract for passenger servicing, let's say, and they have a contract coming up in the next couple of years. And we're in this funny time now where I can't realistically have a contract that doesn't contemplate OOSD because we're so close to it now. But at the same time, we're so far from it that I can't also have a contract that doesn't also keep me safe in terms of the continuity of my PSS type functionality and my backward compatibility. So I think for the next 4 or 5 years, certainly in terms of that cadence of contract renewals, we're going to have these interesting hybrid RFPs and hybrid contracts. So that's kind of one side of the market. I think the other side of the market is people trying to step ahead into what I said to talk about this low-hanging fruit. So I think dynamic pricing, dynamic offer in general, these are the components of OOSD that are ready now. Like, you guys can do this, you've been able to do this for some time. There are other vendors who can do this as well. And I think airlines who have maybe got 5 years to go on their PSS contract are sitting there going, well, I'm not waiting 5 years to implement dynamic offer and dynamic pricing. My competitors are doing that. I need to bring this into my portfolio now. And so those are the kind of the two streams that we're seeing. And certainly that second one of things like dynamic offer is driving what we're calling the third wave of NDC. So people who now have dynamic offers needed an indirect channel to put them in a lot of cases, and so that's driving this next wave of NDC adoption.
That's really interesting. We've seen that as well. Very much, and IATA is saying that as well, where it is now getting to the point of execution, where things are actually starting to happen. And the movement in the industry, obviously, Datalex is very, very committed to offers and orders. We've already put out our roadmap. We're involved with the forum and everything else, and we're seeing very very, very similar things to what you described there. On the subject of dynamic pricing, dynamic offers, we have our own Datalex Plus as well, pricing AI, which I probably neglected to mention. The reason I didn't mention it is because I wanted to ask you about it, because I know very much you are one of the driving forces behind pricing AI within Datalex.
Yeah, so pricing AI is it's an important new addition to the platform. So for quite some time we've had a traditional ATP-based pricing engine. So pricing, final fares at the airlines distribute through ATP. And what pricing AI gives us is the ability to actually implement continuous pricing between those fare jumps that are filed as ATP fares. So we've basically implemented our own AI models that will do demand forecasting and price forecasting to implement continuous pricing that works alongside the ATP filings.
And certainly from when we talk about dynamic offer, you can't really talk about it without AI. I mean, every vendor and the airlines, this isn't being driven from one end. I think the market is very excited about the opportunities. We know that it comes with some elements of risk, but I think everybody is excited about the opportunity. And I think particularly one of the things we're seeing is an interest in being able to bring your own science to this. That there are a lot of different pricing problems that have to be solved. It's not going to be one magical algorithm that solves them all. And so an AI framework that allows you the flexibility to bring that science to bear in all kinds of different areas of the offer seems to be very much front of mind with airlines at the moment.
Actually, a couple of things about that. I know we had a previous conversation about this as well. What you were saying around the whole kind of AI pricing stuff, that what people wanted was guardrails and transparency.
Yeah.
So this whole idea that it's great that all these models exist, but what happens when somebody challenges it? So we've seen that as well, very, very much, that when we've been building the product, it has to have guardrails, it has to have full transparency as to what it's doing.
Yep.
And I think as well, Alan, if you want to take the bring your own science bit as well, it's something that we've come across very much.
Yeah, so with the various customers we talk to, so some are looking for Datalex to provide the science, the AI models, but others have that in-house capability themselves with their own data science teams. So we've given them the flexibility to start with our models, but then later they can introduce their own. And like Brian said, the important thing we also provide, in addition to the science aspect, is a framework that allows them to build in the guardrails and also implement things like A/B testing, so that they can actually evaluate one model versus another and understand which works better and which one.
And I think the guardrails are very important, and I think it's the flexibility that kind of framework brings. I think it's a couple of things. Is one, we know that the science will evolve rapidly at the speed of science, and so the ability to bring new things and try them out, as you said. The other thing I think is on people's minds is the potential of legislation that might come in around how prices are generated and how they're offered. And so the ability to adapt to that as we move forward, if that becomes an issue, is going to be very important.
The other thing I wanted to touch on, so you mentioned at the start, is how long T2RL and Datalex have been involved.
Yeah.
It's before both of our times, really, but obviously that's a partnership, and partnerships are going to become more and more important as we move into offers and orders or OOS. Where do you see those partnerships sort of forming in between which different types of vendors, and how you think that's going to play out?
I think there's a general desire, and this is partly because the PSS was this big monolith, and there's a sense that it kind of has to be replaced all in one go, or at least we have to have the answer to the question, how do I replace it all? And so there's going to be a temptation, I think, for vendors who have an answer to part of the problem to look for vendors who have an answer to some other part of the problem, so that when the big question gets asked in an RFP, they can maybe go together and co-bid or start building partnerships that allow the solutions to be much better integrated and so on. And so I think there is that, I still think there's absolutely opportunities for vendors who bring point solutions. But we know that bigger questions are being asked, and these 10-year contracts that are coming up are for very big slices of technology. And so the ability to answer the whole question, I think, will be important to some.
I think exactly what we're saying. And we were already looking at partnerships ourselves. And obviously, there's various things going on with the IATA, which we can't really talk about. But I think from that, there will be an interesting sort of outcome and a bit of a shake as to how vendors approach things and how things are sort of put together as full solutions. Because as you say, you're not talking about something that is now 18 months or 24 months. You're now talking about something that can span probably longer than most CIOs' careers within airlines.
Yeah, and I think I think the other thing about these partnerships is they're going to start forcing the conversation about the interoperability between the components, which has been a little bit neglected up to now. I think, again, at our conference last year, we were sort of saying we have the external standards for OSD, but we haven't really got good or even any standards at the moment that explain how the components talk to each other. And certainly, an individual vendor can go away and solve that problem for themselves, but for others, it's going to be about developing standards.
Again, I'm not sure whether it's going to be a bottom-up or a top-down approach, but it's going to have to develop as far as those standards have to come from somewhere. The other thing I suppose I wanted to cover off very quickly was, I mentioned at the top, Datalex Pay, a payment orchestration platform that we recently put into Air Transit, and I actually know less about it than you do, Alan. So I was going to ask you just to sort of...
Well, payments is it's the other hot topic. So after dynamic pricing, payments is our conference this year, we're going to have a separate track to try and capture some of this interest. So I think everyone will be very interested to hear what Datalex have done.
Absolutely. We mentioned Stellex, which is our base platform. Annually we process over $20 billion worth of payments through our platform on behalf of our different airline customers. So what we're doing with Stellex Plus is we're looking at areas of opportunity where we can actually add value-added functionality on top of the base platform. One of those is pricing AI, which you mentioned a few moments ago, and then the other is Datalex Pay. So part of what we're doing with Datalex Pay is we are offering enhanced payment functionality. So there's over 30 different payment providers supported out of the box. And it has sort of advanced payment functionality such as dynamic routing of payments. So you can basically route payments to wherever your lowest cost payment processor is, or maybe you can have multiple payment processors competing against each other for your business with different commercial terms. Another area that we've found a lot of interest in is in the area of failed payments. So all the time, airlines will see failed payments on their different digital channels. Some of them will be legitimate failures, and others may not be, maybe just infrastructural issues somewhere down the chain. So one of the things we're doing here is smart retries, where you can actually have an alternate payment processor, and when we experience a payment failure with your primary, we'll automatically retry with the alternate and see if that works. So if there is an infrastructure sort of issue, usually just the alternate payment will go through, and that's a big saving for
I think those two things. So finding the optimum path for each transaction, and then the resilience, making sure we don't have failed transactions. The cost of those can be very high. So that sounds really good.
And just briefly, some of the other key functionalities that Datalex Pay offers is it allows you to sort of outsource your PCI compliance and tokenization features, which is a real pain point for a lot of airlines. And also functionality like fraud detection, dynamic currency conversion, and multi-currency.
So those are all built into the module as well?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Datalex has a very strong commitment to ours, both with the interaction with IATA and also when we presented the roadmap and gone through exactly what we're going to build and how we're going to build it. What would you see as any sort of, what would be your key message or key takeaway as far as what this means for the industry or where this is going?
Well, so one thing, I would go back to your point about partnerships. And as well as partnerships between vendors, partnerships between airlines and vendors. This isn't going to be like PSS migrations that we used to do. That's the first thing to bear in mind. Moving from one PSS to another, 12 to 18 months, even for a large airline, it's absolutely fine. The move to offers and orders is going to be a 3 to 5 year business transformation program. And I think when you're choosing partners to support you down that process, there's a whole other dimension that brings to the relationship is that you're going to have to change your business as well as change your technology. And I think having partners, who have that wealth of industry knowledge and innovation and creative thinking around things like business process and can bring that to bear and help you do some of that thinking is really useful. So that would be probably one of the first things I would think about. I think the other one is about each airline finding the right sequence of investments, because again, this is not going to be an overnight knife edge cut over from one system to another. And offer order is meant to be modular. We're meant to be able to take components of it at a time and pick the pace at which we want to invest and align those investments with the returns, the benefits that we think we're going to achieve. And so I think that process of road mapping, having a partner who will work with you to align their roadmap and their deliveries with yours is also important. And it is, again, stretching out your thinking over a longer period of time.
I think it's a really good insight just to think about the length of the engagement. The transition period does change the nature of the relationship. It's not a fling anymore, it's a marriage.
Yeah.
It's something where everybody has to be going exactly the same direction, and also exactly that. You're aligning the unlocking of value and opportunity all along that.
Yeah.
For quite an extended period of time. That's a really insightful thing. Anything you'd like to add, Alan, just as to where Datalex is going and the current sort of things around offers and orders and the way the industry is moving?
Yeah, just like for someone who's returned to the travel industry after a number of years, previously there was a lot of people.
We're exactly where you left us.
Previously, people were starting to talk about what might this new world look like, but it feels like now is sort of it's time for action. Like people are actually starting to make those first moves. And from a Datalex point of view, I suppose it's exciting for us because as we start to unravel some of those sort of legacy constructs, I think there's going to be a lot of disruption and a lot of opportunity to look at things in a new way.
That's right. Yeah, no, it is. It is. The old Chinese thing about may you live in exciting times.
Yes.
Basically, it is definitely a pivot point, I think, for the industry, and it is fantastically evolving. So, look, thanks again, Absolutely appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Great to see you guys. Best of luck, and see you in September.